But the phrase of respect for authority, I was like, what if these kids growing up that don't have respect for authority is actually a swing of the pendulum that we fucking need? Because it's this overabundance of respect for authority that's like, that's got us our freedom handcuffed from the inside out.
Right. It's kind of interesting. I was talking to Lexi about this the other day, and we were talking about somebody we know who,
Lexi, your wife,
who,
for those who are listening.
right. Somebody we know who has the opinion very much and has actually said, oh, no, I think people should do what they're told. When the conversations around questioning authority have come up. And she's very much like, no, people should do what they're told. And this is someone who's like, previous generations of family were wiped out in the Holocaust, or, a lot of them were killed in the Holocaust. And it's just like, well, hang on a second. Those kind of Auschwitz prison guards were people who were doing what they were told by authority. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So
It
doesn't
what'd she say to that?
Well, we've never said that to her because, frankly, it would
Somebody
be
told you not to.
it would be an undiplomatic thing to say. It would be
Sure.
like I think there's a call to be made when having those kind of conversations.
Yeah.
Some people hang out in particular worldviews because that worldview is the comforting worldview for them. Do you see what I mean? And like, to what degree do you want to take that away, and in what context, or to what degree do you want to challenge it? I don't know the answer to that, what's right or wrong, but sometimes there's that call that's made, which is, if this person wants to continue in that worldview, who am I to say they ought to change it?
Yeah, that is literally where I've been hanging out a lot, and my figuring out and understanding is how much of my pulling back from saying things or asking things that would be disruptive to the status quo or to the reality or whatever is going on, how much of that is because I am unconsciously trying to stay safe, and how much of it is because for me, the highest contribution I can make to life or reality in this moment is me not saying something there.
Right.
Right. It's like just trying to distinguish that. And I know from my own exploration of like my shadow, like this past year, actually, I guess past 6 months since my vision quest, and since that, like meeting the dragon in the cave on the mountain I've shared with you, and that, which is an, expression of my shadow side, where I got like this visceral experience of deep pleasure in the idea of being despised. Ever since then, I have become like really fascinated trying on a regular basis. You talked about circumambulation, right? Like going around and around the self as somebody who is happy to be hated, free to be feared, and really like fighting this. And actually, going from like fearing and hating Trump in 2016, trying to do everything I could to not have him in office, and then to voting for him in 2024 and being relieved when he won, a lot of that came through like letting go of my projections of this way of being in him that I can still see now as unacceptable. Right. And it's like, as I became more willing to accept a side of me that may be disruptive and may make people feel uncomfortable, I became able to see how much of an absolutist I was being in the world and not really seeing the Tao, or seeing a term that I heard recently that I've heard it my whole life, this term, but I never heard it the way I did recently. Necessary evil. And I always heard that and I felt bad. It was like, I always felt sad when I heard that. But this time when I heard it, I was like, oh, fuck, that's the justification for evil, is that it's necessary. Evil in the sense of the opposite of what the popular opinion might desire.
Yeah.
And so, and by no means does that mean that I'm out there. Like, I think the thing I always feared is that if I opened to that, if I went beyond my like totally, absolutism around like purity and that the path of the good in whoever opinion, right, was that like I would just go completely the other direction and I would just not give a shit about anybody. But what I didn't realize is that when you peel back fear, care still exists.
Yeah.
And actually there's more room for care to be that which I navigate from when I'm not afraid.